Thanks for listening to the Hope Christian Podcast. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Transition Series, where we share the stories and testimonies from behind the scenes of the incredible transition of senior leadership at Hope. We hope you're encouraged that God is moving in mighty ways and that He wants to use you too.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Hope Christian Podcast. This week, we're going over another episode of the Transition Series. My name is Cale, and I'm here with Chad Berry. Welcome, Chad.
Hi, Cale. Good to be here today.
So last week, we talked about Pastor Anthony and Pastor Seth's perspective on that final handoff, the commissioning service, as we're sending Pastor Anthony out to Wisconsin, and Pastor Seth is stepping up as the official senior pastor, and just all of the feelings that were involved with that. And this week, we want to talk about the perspective of a church member, someone who was hearing from outside of the staff loop about the transition and seeing what that felt like. So, Chad, now you're on staff, but at this time, you were a big part of the community. You were a member, you and your wife, Crystal, and you were volunteering in various capacities. Could you share what it felt like for you to hear about the transition news?
Yeah, it was an unexpected announcement for sure. We, my wife Crystal and I, we were out at dinner with Seth, and we had just finished volunteering, helping the youth do a music service. So they led the music worship for the Sunday service, and so it was just a follow-up dinner for all I knew and thought. And somehow behind the scenes, Seth felt like he needed to get some clearance from Pastor Anthony, and he shared with us that Pastor Anthony was taking a new job and transitioning, as well as Seth getting promoted, as well as Pastor Anthony staying linked to the church. That was said. And it was a shock. We had a moment of silence at the table, and tried to quickly process all those. You have the shock, the grief, the loss, the joy, and I think the first words either of us said to Seth was, "Well, congratulations." I mean, that's awesome. But wow, this is huge news. Like, what? I didn't know what to ask next. I think we kind of let Seth tell us more from there.
Yeah. After you heard the news and you had time to go home and think about it more, what kind of thoughts were going through your mind?
I think it was all the thoughts anybody would have. I don't think we're any different than a member who was maybe newer in the last 3 months to Hope or a longtime member. The only thing I would say is we had about a year and a half, 2 years worth of attending Hope and serving at Hope for the previous year. And I would say that we definitely had the thought of, wow, they're leaving. These are great leaders. Like the sense of loss, let's just put it that way. Missing them before they're gone. Knowing a secret you can't really talk to everybody at the church about, or much of anybody. We didn't know who knew. Thankfully, we had each other to process, and I know Seth would laugh at the truth. I said, this young kid just got handed an awesome, energetic, on-fire church. Wow. That doesn't happen every day.
Definitely. And so you guys found out about it, I think you said at the beginning of June. Is that right?
I don't have a timestamp exactly, but I'm going to say about the 1st of June, somewhere there.
Yeah. So that was a couple weeks before the official announcement. And during that time, Pastor Anthony had gone on his vacation and had given Seth the opportunity to preach for a few Sundays and kind of see what it would be like to be by himself. So over those next couple weeks, what was changing for you guys when you came to church? Was anything different?
I mean, when you know a secret, you kind of watch things differently. You wonder, who knows? I remember watching Seth preach and think, all right, let's see what this kid's got. Let's see what his style is. And maybe just his own personality. Crystal and I have the joy to say we befriended Seth when he was new as a youth leader. So we had 4 or 5 months worth of being his friend, really his friend. We weren't in his ministries. He actually joined ours because he was playing on the worship team. So I would say we took him under our wing for learning a few musical tips and tricks and how to play on a Sunday and just the tricks of the trade or how this team works. But it was purely friendship. And so it was an easy joy to watch your friend succeed. And I know that it's a boatload of responsibility that just kind of got handed to him, and just watch him handle it. And yeah, he just gave an energetic sermon. I felt like he doesn't hold anything back. He speaks from his heart, and it was queued up and ready to go.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So a few weeks go by, we have the official announcement, and then we have the commissioning service, and we're sending Pastor Anthony off. You mentioned grief initially, but in those last couple of weeks, were you feeling excited? Were you feeling nervous? Were you concerned? What kind of things were you feeling as we were finally tipping over those final days?
I think I had less concern. I'll say because maybe it was behind the scenes. I did hear that there were a few key leaders being promoted or being asked to fill one of the many shoes that were being filled by these leaders, whether it was leading certain ministries. The Simmons have a huge role. They put their whole heart into the church, so they carried a lot and they led a lot, and they would be huge shoes to fill. I think there was definitely the grief and loss. To me, I would say I didn't experience it till the transition service. And it was still blended for me because it was a joyous send-off. To me, I left the service with a phrase I may have only told a few people. I said, it was the happiest funeral I've ever been at. It was like seeing them worship in the front row, full of joy, full of faith. It's a bit of, not really fear, but the faith walk, knowing they're walking into the next adventure when they leave the building, and a sanctuary that was worshiping their heart out, being thankful with joy for what had been laid before them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting to get to see all that Pastor Anthony and Lori had been working to build and cultivate over the many years. Felt like it was coming to its climax as they were leaving. And what a humility to say, okay, God, here's my best stuff, everything we've been working for, and they're seeing it as they're leaving and handing it over. And to me, it was so faith-building to see them choose to say yes to God in those circumstances. And so to kind of transition the topic here, so within a few weeks, you got asked to become part of the team, to join staff as a very temporary media and communications lead, where you would be helping get all of our communications in order in the church. What was your process in considering that, and how did that go?
Yeah, it's been a passion of mine that I didn't realize it was something I at least cared about or loved so much for years even. And it's ironic because Pastor Anthony reached out maybe months prior to follow up with that position. I believe you were transitioning out of the admin or into admin. And so there was going to be a hole in the media department. They wanted to fill it. And for some reason I was on a list of potential people. And as timing laid out, it just didn't line up for February and March early on. I had no idea Pastor Anthony was leaving at that time. I don't even know if they did, if I recall the timeline of the events. But come July, I think Seth reaches out, and you probably gave him my name knowing that past conversation may have happened. And we just picked up the conversation again and checked on like time availability and schedule. And it wasn't quite the mass amount of hours that you had for the position. And so it was, I can give a part-time basis, like limited hours. It's less than 15 a week, depending on the week. And that's what I can offer. And if that's enough to help, I'm happy to help. And so I guess come August 1st was my official start date, hiring date. And we hit the ground running. I know that Seth had a few things that were his new priorities to get fixed in the media department from an online perspective, and whether it's PR, marketing, just whatever label you want to put on it. It's our external image, websites. We had internal communications that I cared about. And so I think in the matter of 4 months, we definitely got them from where they were to a usable state. And there was some great technology that the church has invested in and I wanted to make sure that we could use it and unify the current visions as well as the next vision, whatever Seth might have in store.
So it's been almost 6 months since the transition. And this last week as a church, we were talking about stepping into this new year. And for me, it felt like we finally turned the corner. As a church, we were no longer in that transition mode, but it felt like we were coming together as one to step into the next thing that God had for us. What was your perspective on that first Vision Sunday with our new leader? How did that feel for you?
I think I was anticipating it, because knowing that we have the prayer and fasting week as a church routine, but something that really anchors the tone and the pace for the coming year. I was looking forward to what Seth would say. I had a curious thought where, as a staff member, I wondered, is he going to tell us the vision before Sunday? Have a staff meeting so that we're not surprised? And I'll chalk it up to, I'm just part-time and I didn't know what was going on. No. No, I think there was no room to be that surprised. There's the trust in what Seth would have been, led through prayer and such. I know that he was seeking the real direction and what's right for this time. And I'm not surprised that even the months prior, we laid the groundwork for a few of those, because I know that the marriage focus had started probably at least 3 months prior. But we didn't know that it was going to grow into a church focus. We just knew that there's some strong key leaders that believe in helping marriage, and then we had some other strong leaders who want to support and learn with them, and then help that grow into the church needs. But having it fit into the larger vision, I think, is kind of just a divine appointment a bit, as well as it's encouraging.
Yeah, I agree. And I like what you were saying. It feels like there are a lot of new pieces in the vision, but it's been building since day one. I remember one of the earlier sermons that Pastor Seth shared about the transition from us being on a cruise ship to being on a search and rescue boat. And it was this idea that every person has a role in what we're doing here. And God is calling all of us in this season to recognize that and to step up to the plate, so to speak, in knowing we are each called by God. We have a role that we can partner with God for in this city. And to me, it felt like, looking around the crowd on Sunday, so many people over this last 6 months have stepped up and said, yes, I want to be a part of what God is doing here. Mm-hmm. I want to own that and be a part of something more, something bigger than just myself. And it's been really exciting to see that build over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I don't think you have the 2 services we had on Sunday with excellent attendance, excellent energy, people immersed in worship, just to come hear what the vision is. Like, come surprise me. What's the vision? I think they already had their hearts stirred before Sunday. The old sermon Seth had with the cruise ship is crucial, because everybody has a different set of skill sets. And there are so many workers on a cruise ship that even make it possible to have a voyage. And so I think it's about the umbrella of the purpose of the voyage, knowing you're on this ship or you're in this city and this is your team and so-and-so has got your back when you're sick, or, we all have a role. And I think it's really important to not get too jealous of someone's role in the moment, because your role can change too.
Yeah, amen. So we're really excited to continue unpacking what God has for this year. And I just want to say thank you, Chad, for sharing your heart and your wife's heart in this transition. I know it was big news for you. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with just in regards to what we've been talking about?
I would say that there's a very interesting culture in the staff now. As a staff member, I can say this. I heard it from multiple people from the outside. They said something one time, it looks like your staff likes each other. And just the reason to say that brings a concern in my heart that I guess that's not true everywhere. That our staff is really unified, that we have specific roles and giftings, that that bounce off each other and elevate the other people, that I'm really excited for what the staff does. And I'm only part-time, so you guys who are carrying most of the weekly weight, you guys have been doing an excellent job, and I know that there's a lot more we can do as a team.
And I just believe that as we continue to press into unity together, to lay down our names, like he was saying, to say yes to what God's doing, that we will see these wonderful dreams and plans come to fruition.
Thank you, Cale.
Thank you. All right, we'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. We look forward to connecting with you more next week.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Transition Series. We'll be back next week with more of the story. We love to hear testimonies about what God is doing, so if you have any personal testimonies to share, please submit them at hope-christian.com/prayer.